Hey, welcome in. Well, I think by now we've established on this channel and on many others that the CBC, Canada's state broadcaster, funded by the government, has become nothing more than left-wing propaganda. And so it's not a surprise to find out that apparently the CBC doesn't understand what the word freedom means. Here we have the headline from the Post-Millennial. CBC experts, and we'll get into the experts in a second, but CBC experts warn against far-right connotations on the word freedom. That's right, the far-right connotations on the word freedom. They're trying to make freedom far-right. But this isn't unexpected. We've already learned from outlets like the CBC that free speech is far-right. That's fascist. Freedom of expression, that's fascism. So just freedom itself, just the word freedom, obviously that must be far-right. And this is obviously in response to the Freedom Convoy, the truckers in Ottawa. Why? Because the CBC is shameless. Let's see, Trudeau's state broadcaster, the CBC, said in an article released on Sunday that freedom has become a rallying cry used commonly among far-right groups. Now, you have to keep in mind here that anything they don't agree with, anything they hear that they don't agree with, is far-right to them. So just anything that they don't like, they consider far-right. That's how they operate. So far-right doesn't actually mean anything anymore. Same as racist. Racist doesn't mean anything. When everything is something, nothing is. These are just magic spells that they use. These are magic words they use, racist or far-right. And for a long time, it worked really well. I think the spell is being broken. It's not entirely broken yet, but we're getting there. And stuff like this, which is basically telling you that when you hear freedom, you should think far-right. This goes a long way to breaking the spell. But anyway, let's see. The article states that freedom is, to many, a malleable term, and a word that's open to interpretation. Well, I don't think it's open to interpretation for the truckers. They know what it is, and they want it. That's why they like the word freedom, not because they're far right, but because they're normal people with functioning brains, unlike the people who work at the CBC. Of course, everything on the CBC is like out of 1984 now. You know, freedom is slavery. But anyway, that's the excuse anyway, used by Barbara Perry, who has an actual job as the director on the Center of Hate, Bias, and Extremism at the Oshawa-based Ontario Tech University. So it's a center on hate, bias, and extremism. So I guess that must be all extremism, right? All hate. Well, let's take a quick peek here. Ontario Tech University, Center on Hate, Bias, and Extremism, Dr. Barbara Perry. So let's see, research interests include hate crime, right-wing extremism. So I guess left-wing extremism must be next. No, it's not there, nothing on that. Here she's only interested in right-wing extremism, which I'm going to assume is anything she disagrees with. But in any case, this is somebody who is looking for right-wing extremism, even if it's not there. And just for the fun of it, let's see who the Center for Hate, Bias, and Extremism is funded by. Donors. Oh, well, look at that. Meta. Well, that's Facebook. Oh, well, thank you, Facebook, for funding leftist witch hunters in Canada. That's great. And the other one is Unifor. Who are they? Well, let's see. Unifor is a general trade union in Canada and the largest private sector union in Canada. Oh, they're a trade union. I wonder what they think of the Freedom Convoy. Unifor condemns Freedom Convoy actions. So there you have it, a union condemning the Freedom Convoy. You know, I've heard it said more than once that the Freedom Convoy is a working class labor action. But they sure don't like the truckers. I wonder if they're cozy with the Trudeau government. I wonder if politics has anything to do with this. Oh dear, what's this now? With Unifor and media bailout, Trudeau stacking deck in his favor. Now, I wonder if this has anything to do with the hundreds of millions of dollars that Trudeau has showered on the corporate media in Canada. Well, I wonder if this might help us understand. Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, which counts amongst its members nearly 12,000 journalists. So 12,000 journalists? You mean like the guys who write articles about why the word freedom is such a useful rallying cry for protesters and how the word has become common among far-right groups? Oh yeah, those are the same guys. But I'm sure this is nothing. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's definitely not a big circle jerk between people in the government and the media who all have a shared interest in pushing the same narrative. And let's actually go to the article from the CBC, why the word freedom is such a useful rallying cry for protesters. The word has become common among far-right groups, experts say. Let's see, as demonstrations against the restrictions continue across Canada, the word freedom is on the lips and placards of many protesters. Let's see, the term has taken hold among protesters who were part of the Freedom Convoy, which rolled into Ottawa late January and has become entrenched in the city's downtown. For many, freedom is a malleable term, one that's open to interpretation. Well, okay, what kind of interpretation? Freedom is slavery? That kind? Because I think that's the kind the CBC likes. Anyway, so that flexibility, in part, has fueled its growth among certain groups, said Barbara Perry. So when you're talking about the Freedom Convoy, they're talking about not wanting to have to put something in their body that they don't want to. Like, that doesn't require flexibility to interpret the word freedom that way, right? Seems fairly basic. But, the CBC is desperate, so let's go. Quote, it is a term that has resonated. You can define it and understand it and sort of manipulate it in a way that makes sense to you and is useful to you, depending on your perspective. It kind of sounds like that's what the CBC's been doing. That's what most of the Canadian media has been doing, being flexible with the word freedom. In fact, their definition seems to be it just simply sit down, shut up, and do as you're told. I think that's freedom to the CBC. But here we go to scare everybody. It's also a term that has thrived among far-right groups. Okay, so being against government authoritarianism, being against draconian mandates, okay, that's not far-right, you idiots. Apparently, anyway, this Perry, whose job is to find hate and far-right extremism, unsurprisingly, she says the presence of far-right groups in Canada is growing. And again, that's her job to find it. I don't know, has it gone from 11 people to 12? Well, I guess you'd have to ask Perry. As seen among some protesters currently opposing vaccine mandates and other public health measures, freedom signals a desire for freedom from government intervention or overreach, Perry noted. Okay, good. I'm glad you got that much. Quote, I think it resonates very much with what we're seeing, and maybe takes some inspiration from what we've been seeing in the US over the last year and a half or so, leading up to the last election and events of January 6th. So there we go. She went to January 6th. And don't forget, we're all told that it was going to be an insurrection, right? The truckers were going to stage a trucker insurrection. They were going to take over the government. We're going to have a trucker dictator in Canada. They're hooked on this stuff. They're addicted to it. So you can see what she's doing here. I mean, Trump supporters have been absolutely smeared by the Canadian media. 4 years, the people on January 6th have been absolutely smeared by the Canadian media. And here we have a shameless attempt to try and link the truckers to the people that they've already smeared. Okay. Well, here's the next expert, Evan Balgord, Executive Director of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Where have I heard that before? Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Oh yeah, this, also from the Post-Millennial. Chair of Trudeau-funded Anti-Hate Network spreads anti-Semitism hoax to smear Canadian truckers. That's right, the director of the Anti-Hate Network, Bernie Farber, tweeted this, taken by a friend in Ottawa at the occupation. Apparently in plain sight. It's anti-Semitic propaganda. He claimed that it was taken by his friend. This is the guy who runs the Anti-Hate Network, by the way. Okay, he runs it. Taken by a friend in Ottawa. Apparently in plain sight. Well, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Except a Canadian journalist, Jonathan Kay, found out that this was not taken by his friend in Ottawa. Wow, Bernie, isn't it incredible that the picture your friend in Ottawa at the occupation sent you is identical to the photo posted on Twitter 2 weeks ago by someone in Miami, right down to the ceramic design in the background. You can see it's the exact same picture. It was not real. So the guy who runs the Anti-Hate Network is either incompetent or he was lying. Why? Well, the Trudeau government gave him $268,000 to do anti-hate. So for that kind of dough, you better find some hate to be against, right? So anyway, this Evan Balgord, executive director of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, says the way many protesters frame their calls for freedom renders the word meaningless. I think you might have rendered the word anti-hate meaningless, but okay. And what they're really asking for is a shift in government policy that could potentially have a negative impact on others. Already you're kind of seeing that he doesn't really understand freedom here. Okay, quote, when they're yelling that they care so much about their freedom, they're taking freedoms away from other people who don't have the same kind of agency and choice that they do. Okay, let me explain this. They're saying they don't want themselves or anybody else to be forced to inject something into their body that they don't want to. The other side is saying that everybody has to do it for them because they want them to. So you have people saying they want to take away your choice, your bodily autonomy, for them, and the truckers are opposed to that. The truckers say, you can do it if you want. I don't want to. Don't tell me to, or don't tell anybody else to. So, from this, I think you have to conclude that there is some confusion about the word freedom, but it ain't coming from the truckers. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps me out. If you just like to listen, there's the podcast Radio Baloney. It's on pretty much every platform. If you look for it, you will find it. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.